This is the Tech Currents Podcast, real talk about technology and stories from working in the tech world. All opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guests. And now, here is your host, Sam Cavalier.
Welcome everybody to a special mobile edition of the Tech Currents podcast. Welcome, and as always, my name is Sam Cavalier. I'm your host. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ron Melanson. Ron, welcome back.
Sam, an absolute pleasure. I continue to work on my, you're in the mobile space. I'm working out of my home office, and my lighting continues to stink. So I will apologize for those of you on video, but in many instances, I may be doing you a favor by not being, in the light. So, I started the day like Sam wearing a hat, and then I came to the realization that made it even worse. So I dropped that. And at some point, and I promise our listeners, our viewers, and you, that I will figure out how to actually get all the Logitech stuff to work the way it used to work in my old studio. But that's not going to happen today. So
yeah, big shout out.
April 1st, man.
April 1st. Yeah.
Saw some interesting news that popped across my feed. That back in January, I got swept up by the Amazon layoff, and we've talked a little bit about that. Yep. But today, happy April for those of you who work for Oracle. 30,000 people were let go at Oracle since last we spoke. In fact, I think it was announced today.
Yesterday.
And
actually.
I don't remember if at one of our other casts we had the opportunity to talk about what happened at Square, where they let go basically half of their.
I thought it was Square or Block, or is Block?
Oh, maybe
Square?
It was Block. It was Block.
Yeah, it was Block.
4,000, half their staff go, claiming AI was the rationale.
That's right. Hey, so, that is the excuse.
Yes.
That is the trending excuse for why you can lay people off without any consequences.
It's the standard talk track is everything's being done by AI, not the simple fact that we overhired during COVID. We hired anybody who could fog up a mirror. If we didn't have a job, we want to just hire somebody so our competitor wouldn't get them. And fast forward to a post-COVID world, and suddenly it's like, what's that person doing? We don't know. So not really the best way to go for your hiring experience. But the challenge is if you admit that means that someone in leadership made a mistake. So you can't have that. That's impossible. So tis easier to downsize and blame the AI boogeyman. And I think you and I both written about it. We've talked about it. But it's not all gloom and doom. You and I have been having some really interesting conversations on using AI to advance your personal skills, experimentation, creating projects, creating a lab environments. And I know that you've had some success with implementing AI to help get your life more in order, if you will.
Yes.
And I know that you've recently posted to Substack. You've got a really good article up there talking about the genesis of your tool. And we've mentioned it before, but I'll let you introduce what it is, how it works, why it works, what it does. And I think a lot of folks, when we talk about understanding AI, it isn't going out and taking a free course and being like, oh, look, I've got a certification from Anthropic. Okay. Yes, that helps. All right.
And those are great. I don't want to minimize. They're great. I don't want to minimize them.
I don't either, but go get your certificates from Anthropic or wherever. But the real value when you're interviewing and the real value when you're talking to another organization about potentially hiring you, and they're interested in what you have done with AI. All right. Being a quote unquote prompt engineer is no longer cool. Okay. Any idiot can actually ask ChatGPT or Perplexity or even Claude, basically basic text commands. Okay. That does not separate you from the rest of the pack. Now, I think that if you understand how AI works and you've actually are using AI even in your own environment, in a lab environment, experimentation, and you're trying to solve real world problems with AI, it shows that you understand how to use tools and wire things together in order to achieve a result, not that you sat through a 3-hour class and got a certificate.
Right. I
So
couldn't agree more.
I really would love for you to talk a little bit about and reintroduce your app. Reintroduce your assistant.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how we got there for those who haven't had the opportunity to read the Substack, and then maybe even talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned in your personal journey that are wildly applicable to anybody who's worried about AI.
Yep.
So I'm gonna
Absolutely.
turn it over to you. Let's talk a little bit about what you've done and why you did it.
So first things first, I do want to take an opportunity to shout out to Riverside. We mentioned previously that we have now taken our podcast to a new hosting provider. We're using Riverside. Riverside has been fabulous. And what I like very much about Riverside is their mobile application, and that is what I am using today. I am on the road. Um, so big shout out to Riverside. And hey, if you are looking at Riverside to sponsor somebody, hey, take a look this way. We could always use a little bit of sponsorship. So that being said, yes, AI. So, you know, one of the things that has obviously caught my attention in a big way has been, the fact that, you know, as an older tech worker, and it pains me to say that because I remember it doesn't seem like it was that long ago I was the young guy. But as an
It's
older
funny you
tech
mentioned that.
worker,
I was always the old guy. When you and I started at Microsoft, they looked at me and were like, dude, you're the oldest guy we've hired in like forever. So yeah, so I've always been the old guy. So just
yeah,
become one with it and you'll be fine.
it's bad, right? And so as an older tech worker, I've spent a fair amount of time reading, age discrimination, ageism is the thing in tech. The prevailing wisdom has always been that, older workers are, outside of the fact that they're more expensive and everything, they're slower to take up new technology. Now, that could have and may have been true before. There's a whole separate conversation about whether or not that's true now. We'll visit that another time. That being said, I wanted to make sure that I don't like being left behind on the technology curve. So, one of the friends of the program, Jeremy Wheeler, big shout out to Jeremy and his blog, Virtually Caffeinated. He wrote an article way back, it's more than a year ago now, about some of the new AI tools. And in that case, it was Notebook LM. And I looked at it and I'm like, hey, this is great. I need to try this. So I downloaded Notebook LM. I logged into the website before they had the mobile app. And I'm like, hey, this is great. I could use this for helping me put together some ideas around what to do with the podcast and things like that. So that was fabulous. Well, then it kind of got my wheels turning, and I said, hey, wait a minute, we use Google at my work. Can I use Notebook LM? And I went and looked, and sure enough, yes, I can use Notebook LM. That's great. I already know how to use this tool. So now I'm grabbing documents and putting them into a notebook and using it to help, or uh, taking transcripts from phone calls that happened a year ago and loading them into Notebook LM and using that so that my account executives and myself, because I'm being assigned to accounts and they're brand new to me, I'm using them to get me up to speed on these accounts. I get history lesson, and if I want, or I can actually say, here are things that are currently going on that we should be talking about. And so that became a genesis of me diving in more and more to what was possible with the AI tools. And at the time, I was somewhat limited to, whatever we had access to at work because we were limited in some ways. But,
Right.
they gave us more and more access to Gemini and things like that. And I've been
And
leveraging
by the
that.
way, that in and of itself is super important. Okay, I don't want anybody who's currently gainfully employed somewhere where you have an NDA and you have a non-compete agreements and you have certain agreements you've signed with your employer to just start taking, we'll call it internal, potentially confidential information and uploading it to a public LLM. All
Very,
right, so
very,
let's
very
not go
important.
down. Yeah,
Yes.
just so
So what
yeah.
initially attracted me to Notebook LM and why I started using it was the fact that you were building yourself a sandbox. They specifically said the AI in the sandbox only knows whatever you tell it. If you give it a piece of information, that's all it knows. It doesn't know anything else. And it's not going to share that with anybody else. So perfectly safe. And eventually, we've seen it, companies, businesses, what they'll do is they enter into an agreement with one of these companies, Google, whoever, and they make it so that the default is that they do not use any of the information that's going in to train the LLM, and it's kind of sandboxed off. So that's good. And that's important because of what you just said. You want to make sure that if you're using something, it has been selected by your company so that you are not potentially breaching employment agreements and getting yourself in trouble.
Right.
Totally.
Guardrails matter if you want to
Yes,
stay gainfully employed.
that's exactly right. And so I'll save it for another conversation, but there are a number of things in my sales role that I am now using Gemini for, and I have been building things like Gemini Gems to be able to reuse things regularly without me having to try to remember and things like that. So that being said, during presentations on how I use AI and things like that, I insist to people, be bold. You know, take, try it out. You're not going to break it, so try it and see what happens. And the worst thing that happens is you spend 20 minutes and you're like, this thing is not going to help me at all, and you walk away. No problem. I, on the other hand, have said, I'm going to figure out what to do. Now, I tell more of this story in the Substack article, but at the end of the day, I have, and I've talked about this before, I have a neurodivergent mind. I do. Now, that doesn't mean I'm on the spectrum, but I do have ADHD. You've known me for years. You know it's there. You know it's there because I could get distracted on, I could have been like a cat following a freaking laser pointer.
Oh, look, there's a butterfly.
Yeah. And so I have things scattered everywhere. Task lists, notes, emails. I have easily 6 or 7 different email accounts, all kinds of things. And I missed something very important in my personal life in the last 2 months. I missed something important. And, rather than find a reason to blame somebody else for me, missing this thing, I said, okay, obviously something came in the mail or whatever and I missed it. I can't have that happen again. What can I do about it? And I sat and I was thinking about it, and I remembered a conversation I had with my kids and my wife, and where I said, we are probably the closest now to where, the AI in Iron Man, Jarvis, could be built and could be possible, where you could build an assistant that knows you. You can tell it the kind of personality you're looking for, that you want it to have. You can connect it to these different things, and you can control the things that you're connected to. And then ultimately, you can build additional features in it as you are comfortable. You can make it as helpful, as much as you need. And it's there. Somebody needs to do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. Why the hell not? I haven't been a developer I was a coder by trade, but never by career. So I haven't written an application since you and I worked for CSX. And I wrote I wrote a utility that did all kinds of email conversions for them in Visual Basic. That was last time.
And for those listening, I would argue that was 1996, 1997.
Right. That's exactly when it was. So It's been a long time. So you and I bowl on 2 separate coasts, and on a Friday night, I took my iPad Pro and I went to bowling, and I sat down and I decided to open a project with Claude, and said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to build this. And I want to make sure that I'm ensuring my privacy. I don't want stuff that I want to control what is out in the area. I want it to be sandboxed for me. This is the personality that I want my assistant to have. I go, here's the information about me that I want my assistant to know. Here are the things that I want my assistant to be able to do. I want it to be able to look at my Google Calendar. I want it to be able to look at my Apple Calendar. I want it to be able to go to Todoist and pull my tasks out. I want it to go to my AI note taker, be able to grab and say, okay, here are the action items that came out of here. Put it into Todoist for me. Things like I want it to do those things and keep track of them. And more importantly, I want it to periodically during the day remind me of the things that I have that are due that day. I go, these are some of the things I want it to do. Can we do that? And Claude said, yeah, we totally can. Let's give it a go. And so I sat down, and that became the beginning of my, what became ARIA, my adaptive, rationalizing, intelligent assistant. And I have a version of it that I have loaded onto I have it on my iPhone. I actually was using it today. I have it on my iPad. It's right now registered via test flight, and it is very personalized. It is. This is not something that I'm not shooting for something that I'm going to mass produce and make a gajillion dollars on. No, I'm not doing that. This is literally for me. I need this. And so that's what got me there. And what it amounted to was being bold. And I have learned so much during this process, I can't even begin to tell you, because I got like 3 or 4 weeks into this. And I actually went back to Claude and I said, okay, you and I have been working together on this. I hate the direction that this is taking. I go, the code takes too long. I go, we're using some of these no-code sites like make.com and Zapier. We're using that stuff to do the integration. I'm like, this shit takes too long. I go, there's got to be a better way. And and Claude came back and said, well, if you're up for coding, you could write an app that would go much faster. And I'm like, well, why didn't you lead with that? So and so we pretty much scrapped all the stuff that we had been working on, which was fine because I was running into problems. And rather than just give up, I'm like, nope, there has to be a better way. And that's really when we talk about AI and using AI is not the solution to a problem. AI is a tool for helping you find the solution to a problem. And so, at the end of the day, what you're going to get out of AI, in my mind, is your ability, based on your ability to articulate a problem and think for yourself out of the box of the direction you want the solution to go, or be able to guide it into what you want it to do and where you want it, more importantly, not to do. That's some of the stuff that I have been learning as I go through this, because being able to properly prompt things is important, but it's important because of the things you don't want the AI to do. Because otherwise, you run into hallucinations. And if you want to avoid hallucinations, you have to be able to tell it, hey, listen, here's the walls of your box. If it's not in this box, don't invent an answer. I don't want you to invent an answer. I'm going to know if it's invented. Things like that. it's been an incredible learning, and I am going to be documenting it over a series of Substack articles, starting with the one that is published now, which talks about the genesis of this assistant, and I'm going to talk more and more about where I'm going with it because it is tremendous, and I'm every day and this is one of the great things about projects in Claude. I'll think of something else I wanted to do, and I'll just jump over to my project and say, hey, here, add this to the stack of things I want this to be able to do. And it'll come back and it'll say, noted, let me add it to the stack. Let's focus on the things you want to do today. This is a feature for down the road. Because, for example, one of the things I wanted to do down the road is I wanted to really understand me. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to give it either access to my socials, or I'm going to, archive my socials and feed it into the AI so that it gets an idea of who I am.
Right.
And that way it can know the difference, and I can say, listen, don't tell me about something if you know this is something that will deviate from who I am and the way I make decisions. Things like that. It's the second, effectively, folks are referring to it these days as the second brain. That's what I'm shooting to build. It's that second brain which will contain, what I've done, what I've written across socials. So not just Facebook, not just Twitter, not just LinkedIn, but blog postings that I've done that go back 20 years.
Right.
Things like that. So yeah, it's an incredible journey, and one that I am super duper excited to share with everybody as I build it. I know my friends at bowling, and I bowl with tech folks. I bowl with folks in tech. One friend works at Avanade, and the other one works in the county of San Diego.
Right.
And they're both like, not only are they encouraging and excited, but every time I make a major leap forward, they're impressed. So the first time I got Aria to respond to me, and I was doing something as simple as a Siri shortcut. They were like, "Whoa, that's kind of cool," But that's not ultimately how it's going to work. I wanted to build my own app and things like that. So, but I specifically mapped out phases so that I didn't get caught up in scope creep.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's been a load of fun too, because what it does is these are conversations that I can now have. I can have conversations with people now, and I can talk about, am I going to use a RAG? Well, I don't know. I can use markdown files, or I can use a RAG. I'm thinking I'm probably going to use a RAG, and I would like to, if it's, as long as it's fiscally, responsible, because that's one of the other criteria that I put in the list. It's got to be fiscally responsible. I don't want to be shelling out $100 a month to run this thing. Like, that's not going to work. So, and more to come.
Interesting.
More to come.
Yeah.
And what's really important is that what I'm building, I don't intend to have anybody lose their job over
it. There you go. But what you just described is really an opportunity to experiment, right? You had a problem. You've had this challenge for a while. I mean, I remember early days you used to carry notebooks around with you all the time, physical notebooks, and you would be taking notes in those, right? I would just go with it. I heard it and I forgot it, so I just let it go. If it's important, they'll ask me again. But you, on the other hand, used to copious notes. You'd always do that and very follow-up oriented. And the interesting thing is how you've advanced and taking a look at AI from potentially a different point of view, right? You kind of a slightly different spin of how can I make my life simpler by using these net new tools, right?
Right.
And I'm impressed with the journey, because not only did you start down one path, realize it was wrong. That was I wouldn't say it was an improper experiment, but it was an experiment that led to more complexity and failure, if you will. And then you said, you know what? I learned a lot from that, which goes back to a lot of things we talk about from hiring, We talk about answering star questions. What was your situation? You just went through a whole star process with us, and you didn't ramble. So the interesting thing is, what was the situation? What did you do? And the beauty of it is you tied it all with what you learned. All right. And those are the sort of things that people need to be doing. All right. And it doesn't matter if you're gainfully employed right now, you've got to kick the tires on this stuff for no other reason than to be having an open, honest, intelligent conversation about how you personally are using AI and what you know about AI that could potentially be in play for another company if you're going to interview there, or even having conversations with folks over dinner. Oh my God, you talk to a lot of people who aren't in our industry, and they're like, oh my God, AI is taking all these jobs, because they read the headlines. Okay, I mean, it's
Right.
like, oh my God, it's a brutal job market. Yes, it is. AI is not necessarily the reason. It's the boogeyman that people like to blame because they can, and it's easy because no one is. Like, AI is just this ubiquitous thing, and is it Google's fault? Is it Anthropic's fault? Is it OpenAI's fault? No, it's just this AI construct, right? So when you talk to people, they don't understand the differences between any of those three companies I just mentioned. They
Right.
just see AI as
is
this
literally
creeping thing that's going to come back and steal their jobs.
this is literally the next iteration of automation that we had been using for years.
Yep.
That's what it is,
Yeah.
right? So that's what we're doing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was a natural progression
Yep.
from batch files
Right.
and kickstart scripts
Yep.
and all the things that our friend Mike used to be able to do. Like the
Yep.
man was just, I mean, he was a
Big
master.
big shout out to Mike Margolo.
Yeah, big shout out to Mike Bergolo because
In case
he is a
he's one of
master.
the three people who listens, just hey Mike,
That's right.
just called
In
you
the
out.
event you are one of the three people that is
Right. Hey,
subscribing to
look,
the
when we were at Microsoft, the whole idea around ODBC, the ability to have Microsoft applications share content amongst themselves, right?
right.
It disrupted the entire industry.
That's
Because
right.
prior to that, you had everything in little silos. There was no glue that took you from app to app to app, so you didn't have to recode and retranslate information. ODBC came about as a database model, and it was like, okay, I want you to go look at this. It's an Access database, or this, it's a SQL database, and I'll pull what I need. And you could develop apps, and you'd also have apps that could talk across to each other. And effectively, you're taking this to the next level, where you're talking about using artificial intelligence-based apps and their API subsets to do what? Communicate to each other with the
That's
intent
exactly right.
of being a benefit to you in your workflow.
And automate things that should be automated.
Exactly.
So like I'm working with something at work where as part of our sales process, we're looking at opportunities and we're documenting them and we're saying, how vetted is this opportunity? We have a rubric. Well, instead of somebody just sitting there looking at the rubric and looking at the document, what if I could create a gem in Gemini that
Right.
knows the rubric, and then I just give it the document and I say, you tell me, what does it look like? And it does it.
Yeah.
I, I mean, I don't know that that's taking anybody's job. It's something that should be automated.
Right.
And
Yes.
rather than writing an app for that, why bother? I don't need to.
Yeah.
You know,
No, you're right.
I can actually now turn around and say, okay, listen, everybody on my team, put those documented opportunities on this template, throw it in that folder, and then I can run the rubric. I can run the gem against the entire folder, and it'll go ahead and spit out an entire report. I mean, grading papers. I have a lot of friends that are teachers. Why not?
Yeah.
You spend hours upon hours of grading papers. What if you didn't have to? Especially ones that are, whether it's multiple choice or math problems or what. What if you didn't have to? What if you could just feed these things in, have it spit out everything for you, and you're good? You can always go back and check them to make sure that, you want to give partial credit or something,
Right.
fine. But, maybe you don't have to spend hours doing that anymore and you could spend more time prepping. I don't know.
Hey,
I'm not telling anybody how to do their
there's
job. I'm just kind of
no. I think you're right. There's an art component and a science component. All
use
right,
it as
and
the tool that it's meant to be. That is everything.
exactly
Everything the technology, when it was created, it was meant to make people's life easier. We may not have seen how, but that was the point.
right.
At the time, we may not have been able to figure out how. There only were visionaries like, Roddenberry and Lucas and that or Asimov who created these notions of things that technology could be, but the technology wasn't there yet. Well, some of those things are here now, and I feel like we'd be remiss if we have a way to do it and have the focus for human intelligence be on the things that need human intelligence. And so, does that mean there are places where we're using AI incorrectly? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But if in an ER, instead of having to wait, potentially hours for a radiologist to look at a
Okay.
film, if an AI that has been taught based on hundreds of thousands of images of X-rays can say, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna flag this for the radiologist to review because I think I see this. Is that such a bad thing? I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I think that might be really good. Things like that. And so that's literally I'm trying to do like this much for me. And I'm now choosing my tools based on their ability to give me API access so that I can feed them into my
Right.
assistant to be able to help organize it.
Yeah.
So there.
Now, what I appreciated something you talked about earlier was the guardrails component, right? And we talked on an earlier podcast a little bit about OpenClaw, and people are just being lazy in many instances, and just taking their AI tools and just pointing them at a bunch of open GitHub repositories and giving them way too much information, personal information, passport numbers, credit card information, a bunch of things that they, you know,
Right.
you should always be the human in the loop on some of those things that are truly impact you financially, or that could impact your ability to be um, uh, imposter, right? Or somebody could create, somebody could be like another version of you, right? Or
Yeah,
scam.
agreed. Agreed.
So, I appreciate the guardrails component that you brought to the table, where you've been very restrictive on what Aria knows about you and how you want Aria to act. You didn't give it your passport number. You didn't, open it to, like I said, OpenClaw. If you read about it, it was an awesome idea. Arguably, the implementation model was not designed for the masses. All right.
Right.
Anybody who gets a chance to read about OpenClaw can understand that the security construct, there isn't any. Right.
Right.
So it's, so basically it's like, hey, I'll open up to everything. And so you don't know what's in some of those GitHub repos, and most people are too lazy to go check. Anyway, but I appreciated the guardrails component, right? Very, very restrictive on what your AI agent knows about you. Now, fast forwarding to a Jarvis perspective, okay? Jarvis knew more about, Tony Stark than I would
Yes.
argue
Yes.
Arya knows about you at this juncture in time.
That's right. That's right.
But will you eventually get there? Maybe, don't know. But the ability
No.
to integrate a lot of these different things along with where you are right now, it would be interesting if it does Aria know from a geolocation perspective where you are. And when you get your weather report every day, does Aria cross-reference your geospatial location to know and say, hey, Sam, I know you're in Northern California today and it's going to rain, but if you were home in Southern California, it would have been a beautiful day. So
Right.
there's pieces where everybody and their uncle knows where you are. Okay. The government knows where you are. Your cell phone provider knows where you are. And people are more than happy to sell that content, and that from a data broker perspective. So it's out there. So it begs the question as to whether or not how much you want to open up, your AI
So,
to know
and
these
it's
sort of things.
interesting. So
But
I
I
consciously
appreciated the
made the
guardrails piece. And I
decision.
think a lot of folks, as they're beginning this experimentation journey, kind of kicking the tires, you need to go into it eyes wide open and not get lazy, because when you get lazy, you drop your guard. Or when you drop your
Yes.
guard, potentially bad things can happen. So,
Agreed.
And I know that you did put a lot of time and effort into documenting your story on how you did this. We will include a link to your Substack on the show notes, and make sure everybody
Yep.
gets has the opportunity to go read that. I'm personally looking forward to more, not only discussions about how Arya is evolving, but how you have him more aligned with a parallel version of you that's doing the grunt work, which is going to free you up to do higher value things, whether that be more time with friends and family, whether that be higher probability of closing deals, whether there's opportunities to teach others on what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to those upcoming Substack articles on how the rubber met the road, if you will, and how you actually did this, along with, and I think you should really document the false start that you had. And
Yes.
then what was your aha moment? So you kind of know you've hit the bottom of the hole, stop digging and go somewhere else and potentially
Yes.
start something new.
Oh,
But
that is very much in volume. I don't know if it's 2 or 3, but yes, very
right.
much so. We plan on talking about that because um, that's actually where the most value is. It's
The
very
one
much
thing,
so.
and then coming back to what we had talked about earlier, I don't want to take away from Aria, but at the same time, today, again, April 1st, no, no April Fools here, is the Bureau of Labor Statistics just reported that hiring rate fell to 3.1% in February.
That's from
Okay. That's
4.2, I think.
the lowest it's been since April of 2020. And you know when April 2020 was? That was the pandemic. Okay. So the crazy part right now is job openings dropped to about 6 million, just shy of 6.5 million, down almost 400,000 from January. Okay. So, which is interesting. Okay. That's job openings dropping. The two other data points that I found intriguing is, one of them is the people who are quitting their job and just saying, you know what, I've had it, I'm done, is a low 1.9%, because a lot of people are hunkered down and they're sitting back and saying, you know what, come heck or high water, no matter how bad it is, I know it's worse out there, so I'm going to stay where I am. And for some reason, again, this is from a government reporting perspective, they say layoffs were about 1.1%. The numbers feel different based on what we see on LinkedIn, and also some of the things we see in the news. As I mentioned, Oracle 30,000 today, and retirements. This is the crazy part. Look, I'm getting in that end of career mental mode, and from a retirement perspective, a lot of people have held back and they've stopped moving forward on potentially retirement in 2026 for a variety of reasons, of which we don't need to go into. But most people are staying put right now. The downside from retirements sticking around is people don't pop off the top of the stack, right? Which would open up opportunities for more junior people to come in, right? So junior folks are getting boxed out right now because there's not a lot of jobs that are out there, and heaven forbid. And I've got my son's graduating top of his class in aerospace engineering. He can't even get an interview in places. I mean, he's struggling to find a job, right? And he graduates in May. So, for this new generation of folks, and their early 20s, I think we called them freshies last time we talked.
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of like that clip. You've put that all over the place. But the young people who are just coming into the job market are absolutely hammered, because there's a lot of folks who are more experienced than them willing to take, we'll say, lower level jobs, assuming those level jobs even exist. When Oracle's laying off 30,000, those are 30,000 people with experience under their belt who are probably getting let go due to no fault of their own. So not performance problems. Amazon, 16,000 in January. Likely most of those were not performance problem, folks. That's between those two, that's 46,000 additional technology people in this space who are competing for the same roles, even if they're, junior level roles. that folks who are just coming out of college are struggling with. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this job market evolves across the next 3, 6, 9, potentially 12 months, if it's going to get worse. I mean, if you really take a look at the data and you start thinking about it, the last time all these things came together from perfect storm perspective was the Great Recession. And I want to say, was that 2008 was when that occurred. So we're going to see what happens in 2026, but it's a little sketchy out there if you're on the earlier side. However, again, talking about what we talked about earlier, understanding that AI is a differentiator, understanding that AI, the ability to use AI is important to a lot of customers and a lot of companies right now. Sorry, I'm still in customer mode. A lot of companies, you're doing yourself a service to learn how to wire these things together, do those little experiments. Doesn't cost a lot of money. In many instances, it doesn't cost any money. Kick the tires, figure it out, and be able to talk about what you've done, right? Because that will really differentiate someone who's newer to the industry, but has done AI work versus someone who spent the last 8 years working at an organization, but they're still, I'll use the term, still old school, still, as you said, Sam, doing things manually with notebooks and writing things down. So I think the key is really to learn and experiment and see AI as your partner, not as your competitor, and also see it as a differentiator between yourself and potentially others who are all vying for the same job, and be able to talk about it.
Yep, that is critically important. It is so important. It really, really is.
I think what we're going to need to do on
it's a natural evolution.
One of our potentially future podcasts, I think we need to get back into helping people understand how to storytell, because it's a skill that a lot of folks don't have, and folks who had it, who haven't interviewed in a while, or have probably lost the muscle memory on being able to storytell with data, with results, not ramble, be on point, be able to get through potentially a star question in 2 minutes or less, right? And then also how to follow up when you're done with those 2 minutes to find out if the person who's listening to you wants more.
Right.
Because you can always ask, is there anything else that is interesting, or is there anything else that I spoke about that you want more detail on, as opposed to spending the 18 minutes, leading into, a 30-second, here's what I did. So I think we're going to have a storytelling discussion. And I think I know a couple folks who are experts in this space. You're extremely good yourself, but I think there are some folks who kind of do teach others about storytelling for a living. So I'm trying to get a couple of those folks as guests on the podcast.
And that would be great, actually. Yeah. Yes, because I know I could use a refresher. So yeah, that would be a great future addition. So
cool.
Excellent. Well, I think for once, we'll keep it to under an hour, and that will kind of do it for this edition. There'll be more to come, and there'll be more to come as we do, as the weeks come, and I release more on Substack about the AI journey.
It would also be interesting, and maybe we can invite Aria to one of our podcasts.
Yes, I would love to.
Yes, I could ask Aria all about you. Things I don't know about you.
Once I've given it its own voice, which is in phase 3, I think. I think the third phase is to give it its own voice, so that it's not using Siri's voice.
Yeah, there's some pretty awesome work that's going on in this space. The other person, and I don't know if he's listening or not, is a good friend of mine, Pete Zaris. Pete, I've known Pete from Microsoft,
sure.
Also from Amazon, and Pete is now doing his own. He has his own startup, and he's spending a lot of time in the AI space. And he also created an AI marketing persona for his business. He talks about it a lot on LinkedIn. So if anyone's interested in following Pete's journey, you all might find that interesting also.
It would actually be, it would be pretty cool to have Pete on and talk about that. That would be terrific.
I owe him a phone call, so let me reach out to him and find out if we could pull something together. Because I could set the stage and listen to the two smart guys go, and you guys can talk about your journey and what you're doing with Aria. And for the life of me, I can't remember what Pete's assistant's name is, but
Yeah, I'll
again,
have to look it back up. Yeah,
I think it's pretty awesome. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for folks to learn this stuff, kick the tires, and just understand it. Right?
Yep.
Understand what works, understand what doesn't work, and be able to talk about your experience. I mean,
you'll learn more from the stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn more from a failure than you do a success because you might have just gotten lucky.
Yep.
So again, April 1st, job numbers suck. Artemis is supposed to go off tonight. I'm hoping,
Yes.
I'm hoping that we'll do that. Anyone knows opportunities for a young aerospace engineer, reach out, let me know. I'll have my Padawan send his CV to you.
I think it's like a little bit more. The window begins a little more than 2 hours from now.
I would agree with that. So yeah, I am on the proper coast. So also the coast it's launching from. So it is roughly 4:30 on the East Coast. As I said, the coast as it should be. By the way, you're welcome to come back to the East Coast anytime you're interested. I think the statute of limitations has run out, so I think you can come back now. But I think it's a great opportunity for the country to kind of pay attention to some of this space stuff. Take your mind off of some of the other crazy.
So by the time we get back together again, we will have the folks will have been back from visiting the moon. So
one can only hope.
That's right.
Safe travels.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
Godspeed,
thank you.
Godspeed to the astronauts. Ron, thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for those of us who've tuned in to listen, and look forward to chatting again really, really soon. Take care of one another and be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Currents Podcast. The Tech Currents Podcast is hosted by Sam Cavalier. All content and views expressed as part of the Tech Currents Podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast platform, any employment organizations, or any affiliated entities. This podcast is informational purposes and should not be considered for professional, legal, or financial advice. Please consult with your qualified, licensed experts for your specific needs. This is Daniel Iverson. Thank you for listening.